This week's message about what do I want to be when I grow up? Still speaking as somebody who's still in that process. If we stop growing, if we stop learning, we stop growing. If we stop growing, if we're not going forwards, we're going backwards. We're not standing still. So what do I want to be when I grow up? Do we want to be a bracha or a klala? To be a blessing or a curse? Well, that depends on our obedience or disobedience to the word of Yahweh, who's the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak and Yaakov. He is who He is. I love that when they said, what shall we call you? And He said, I am who I am. You can imagine that. And He says it the same yesterday, today and forever, eternally. And because of that, He hasn't suddenly changed His mind and watered down His word or relaxed His standards just to cater for the self-centered needs of today's black is the new white, compromised new age. And this is what they do. What used to be lies is now the truth. And what's it done with? Words. And if advertising didn't work, they wouldn't keep spending all that money on it. If it didn't influence people, why bother? Sin is sin. Idol worship is idol worship. No matter how you dress it up in fancy ribbons and bling and spin-doctored politics. Today's so-called media prophets and dreamers still entice people to serve other gods of the people surrounding us. And not only that, they go out there and they bring other gods back from around the world to us. So as believers, what should our response be? Simple. Don't listen. Don't accept it. But by ignoring it, it won't work. It won't just go away. We have to expose this destructive, detestable wickedness. Why? Because we're a people set apart as holy, set apart for Yahweh. Our Elohim, our God who chose us and redeemed us to be His unique treasure out of all the peoples of the earth. That puts an enormous responsibility on us. And it doesn't mean one group of people are any better than any other group of people. It just means, are we fulfilling our responsibility? It's between them and Him. What responsibility that He's given them that they're fulfilling. It's not our job to point the finger. Often I'll criticise the religious system, the church system. I'm not criticising people, I'm criticising the system, which is a spiritual system. We're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. Love the people, but not the sin. And if we're not speaking the truth, then we're coming under a curse. Because that's what it's all about. And if we're not speaking the truth, how can somebody be set free? So He chose us to be His unique treasure out of all the people on the earth. The enormous pressures and temptations exerted by these prophets of doom and gloom and these so-called religious dreamers, just send a check and we'll run it up the prayer tower for you. I saw one of Benny Hinn's offsiders this week going on there demanding that people give $113 a month. And it's the emotional blackmail and pressure to do it. I mean, this guy was screaming at the television screen for people to send money, and that basically they'd be damned if they didn't. Wow. That's the religious system at work. These so-called religious dreamers is designed purely to get us to either conform to the standards of the culture that we live in, or to simply do nothing, which is their preferred thing. It's like, We'll just continue what we're doing and you just go back to sleep while we do it. Politicians love that. It's like, we'll wake them up again once every 4 years and then they go back to sleep again. This pressure to be normal, whatever normal is, if what they're doing around me is normal, I don't want to be normal. And the pressure to fit in, just like everyone else. It's enforced by the threat of ridicule and rejection. The same thing, the playground thing. If you don't do the things that we do, you can't join our club. I don't want to join their club. So, rejection, shunning, shame, all these things are used as weapons. Surreptitious but powerful spiritual weapons wielded by our media-led society. This overwhelming desire to fit in. So does that mean we should accept abortion? Or same-sex marriage? Or the religious lies and man-made rules and traditions that have been passed down to us through the centuries? Does 2,000 years make it any more true than it was 2,000 years ago? No. It was a lie then, it's a lie now. All they've done is compounded it. Should we sacrifice to Hindu death gods while we're living in India? Do as the Romans do. No, do not do as the Romans do.
You've seen the Empire State Building. It's got a face of Kali on it now, which is the goddess of destruction.
It's like the whole Chrislam thing that's sweeping America, and it's an Australian that's coming here, where they've got the crescent moon and the cross together over the top of their meeting houses. So the churches are actually having this Chrislam sign now, mixing Christianity with Islam, and they're coming together in brotherhood. Rick Warren in particular, there's a whole bunch of these religious leaders in America that are driving this whole Chrislam movement. Oh yeah, when he is crowned, if that ever happens, God forbid, he doesn't want to be known as the defender of the faith. He wants to be known as the defender of the faiths. He's always made that quite clear. He wants to be the defender of the faiths. That was years ago, and the interesting thing is more of these faiths are coming here so he can fulfill his dream.
Jeffrey, our friends who are pretty old, not as old as me, but they're not actually settled in Britain. They should get a pension there. Because it's a place called Ludlow House. And the people in Ludlow House were told to stop their euthanasia, so they said they did, but they didn't. Their daughter opened, and so a 38-year-old woman went to them a while ago. She said, I'm tired of living. Now, I prayed for somebody who said they want to die, and the spirit led to them, she changed.
That's right.
But anyway, she went to this place, and they stood there with the children, and they watched it. And she suffered. It wasn't the people there to talk.
Yeah. But they portray it as mercy.
Heaven, awful.
Yeah.
Evil.
So, because there's more Muslims living around us, should we practice Sharia law? Cut hands off. Gouge eyes out. It's happening in the UK. They already have Sharia law running alongside normal. So maybe we should practice superstition and witchcraft when we're in Europe. People say they haven't got a religious belief system. Yes, they have. It's called spiritualism and witchcraft.
What about the old thing on Horus?
Yeah. But isn't it all our cultural heritage? Everybody talks about, we must embrace these things because it's our cultural heritage. It's not my cultural heritage. I won't embrace it. So, no, absolutely 100% not. We are from a different kingdom. And because of that, we practice its standards wherever we find ourselves. Do you think the Israeli ambassador in Wellington does things the Kiwi way down there? In that embassy, it's a little bubble of Israel. And everything that would happen in Israel, laws, everything are all practiced within that one place. I guarantee that when he's there with his friends, he speaks Hebrew. It's Israel for them, even though they're living in a different country. They don't suddenly conform to everything of whatever country they go to. So we practice our the kingdom standards wherever we find ourselves. We've been set apart by Yahweh and commanded not to conform to secular or religious society. In fact, we're actually actively commanded to expose and oppose these things and not condone them.
Amen.
If we do not condemn them and if we don't expose and oppose them, then we're condoning them by default. We are to be a bracha, a blessing, not a curse. But so many people, they visit their shrines, they visit their temples, they visit their cultural places, and all these things, they go, ooh and ah about all the architecture and everything else. And they miss the point that there's a spiritual force behind these places. It's not a cultural thing that we're to be involved in. We're not to visit their shrines, we're not to admire their idols and praise their literature and ceremonies in the name of culture, entertainment and tolerance. Make no mistake, we are actually participating in their practices and coming under their curses.
And that goes for yoga as well.
Absolutely. Most of the things that we see at ground level are just the entranceway, the seduction. Once you're actually involved with a lot of these things, it gets more into where it actually comes from, the root of the whole thing.
Well, the word yoga actually means union. The word religion actually means union.
But it's all about the mind and not the spirit. So does that mean we should fear them? So many people go around and say, oh, we mustn't go near them, we mustn't touch them, we mustn't... No. We've got an outrageous virus that they catch, not the other way around. We don't catch what they've got. They catch what we've got. We don't need to fear them. You get people saying, we're going to hang on, the kingdom might just survive. And then Yahweh says, hang on, I'll show you where it's really at. We're not surrounded by them. They're surrounded by us. We have 2/3, they have 1/3. Get the proportions right. We win. I've seen the end of the book.
And I felt this terrible evil, and then Rob, I said to Rob,
Yeah.
we said that's an abortion clinic.
Yes.
You know, I wanted to walk in and do something, but it was so tangible. It just frightened.
Isn't it interesting? All the way through that, one of the evil things that happened was different kings proclaimed that the firstborn would all be killed.
Yes.
And they did it because they feared what would come out of that particular area from that Jewish population. Now, the same women are queuing up and saying, I have a right to it. Then, they put them in reed baskets and floated them down the river so it wouldn't happen. Most abortions are firstborn. That's why it's so strong. That's why it's so insidious. Because the enemy knows that the firstborn is going to be a threat to him. The firstborn are blessed. The firstborns belong to Yahweh. And he's trying to obliterate all the firstborn.
Well, it's a big business now.
Oh, it's a huge business.
They take all the parts and sell them off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the cosmetics. A lot of these cosmetics are based on the byproducts. They're not using them anymore now. They've synthesized them, but that's where it came from. No, they use them in some places, yeah. Absolutely. So should we fear them? No. We are more than conquerors. We don't just conquer, we come in and occupy afterwards. We carry healing and restoration with us. But only for the people involved, not the system itself. And this is where you've got to understand. You've got to separate the system from the people. We can go into a Hindu temple and I love the people, but not the system, not the sin, not what's behind it all. Abba wants to reach every single one of them. We will never change the system, so stop trying. So many people say, oh, I've gone in there and I'm going to be an influencer and I'm going to change them. No. They're like an apple put in a bag full of rotten apples. Guess what happens to it? The rotten apples still stay rotten, but they infect the good apple that goes in. Never the other way around. I've seen a lot of people waste their lives thinking they can influence things from the inside. I've tried it. You think, oh, if I get into leadership then I can change things. No, it's a system. You will never change the system. You have to leave the system and implement Yahweh's system. We will never change the system, but only those trapped within the system. How? By wrestling with the spiritual principalities and powers that are over them, but not with the flesh and blood. And our weapons have to be kingdom weapons, because they're spiritual and not carnal. But aren't we just overreacting and getting all religious? Oh, but they're just such exquisite, beautiful statues. And the painting, look at the painting, look at the brush strokes. Oh, the jewellery. The charms on the bracelet, aren't they wonderful? No. We're either part of the blessing or part of the curses. There's no in between. People say, I only go to these places to admire the wonderful religious architecture. Religious architecture, the cathedrals in the UK. When you walk into these cathedrals, on the floor is a pentagram as part of the entrance there. And on the outside edges, there's all these demons leering down at you. Usually there's a spout that all the water comes through, but they're everywhere. There's a place in Lincoln in the top part of England, and the local soccer team are called the Imps. And the reason they're called the Imps is because they're named after the evil things that are around the top of the cathedral there.
The streets in Washington D.C. have all the signs of the Freemasons actually laid out.
Oh yeah.
At the start of the English cathedral, they got the hologram.
Hologram.
They practiced it.
Yes.
So they said they were fixing the roof. And what they did was, they did the hologram supposed to be Yeshua, or Jesus Christ. And some people found out about it.
You ever seen American banknotes? You ever seen the upside down triangle on the back with the eye in the middle? Because America was founded by Freemasons, those that came out of the Rosicrucians, which was the Crusader. The Rosicrucians was the religious part of the Crusaders. That was their churches. And they set up a whole bunch of temples. And when you see the law courts in the UK called the Outer Temple, the Inner Temple, the Middle Temple, those were the Rosicrucian temples that were built there, but they gradually were taken over by the legal profession. But the whole constitution was put together based on those principles, which is why they use those symbols in lots of areas there. And the upside down pyramid with the eye in it was to depict the destruction of the Masons in France when they were thrown out of France because they were exerting undue influence in France. And so in one day they basically shut all of their temples down and threw them out. And most of them went to Scotland. Yes, and some of them became the stewards when they had the heir to the kingdom of Scotland. One of them was about 12 or 13 or something. And one of these guys was put in as the steward to sort of help him govern things before he came of age. But eventually they decided, well, we're doing all the work, so we'll take over. And they call themselves the Stuarts. So the stewards became the Stuarts and became the reigning monarchs. It's like all these things that history that people don't remember, they don't understand that. We're watching this thing now again on Netflix, Upstairs, Downstairs, but it's sort of the second version of it. And what they were showing was Mosley. And most people don't realise that these black-shirted guys were giving Hitler salutes and marching up and down England, recruiting people to become British fascists. Britain had the fascists just like Italy did, just like Germany did. And Mosley was the head of the whole thing. They all wore black shirts and they all gave the Hitler salute and all of this kind of thing. People don't realise that happened.
When was it?
In the 1930s, mid-1930s. Yeah. And they used to march through the East End of London, and all the Jewish tailors and everybody else like that used to. They were the only ones that would stand up against them and fight them. They'd have stand-up fist fights, including a guy called Vidal Sassoon. What people don't realise about Vidal Sassoon is they see him as this sort of almost gay hairdresser. What they didn't realise is when he took his holidays every year, he went to Israel and fought in all of the wars. He was a reserve major in the IDF. And when he came back, if he had any scars and things like that, he'd say, me and my friend, we just had a cat fight. But people didn't realise who the real guy was and what he got into. And he fought in all the major wars over the last 20 years in Israel. So there's a lot of these things that what you see is not what you get. Anyway, I'm completely... It's because Pamela's not here, so I can get away with it. Not when she hears this.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
We won't say a thing, okay?
Yeah. So we look at their exquisite, beautiful statues and paintings and jewellery. And people say, I only go to these places to admire the wonderful religious architecture and listen to their traditional, magnificent music and singing and admire the amazing costumes and inspiring pomp and ceremony. Yes, but are they part of the blessings or the curses? That's what it comes down to. Yes, it might look flash, they might look all sorts of things like that, but are they part of a blessing or a curse? Yeah, I know, I understand. They told me before they came and I had to go early. Blessing to have you here. But doesn't everyone wear crucifixes? Isn't it normal for people to wear a crucifix? I once heard the thing was saying, it's a good job they didn't have the electric chair in those days. They'd be wearing this great big thing stuck around their neck. Don't everybody wear hamsters? It's all part of religious systems. You can't just, hamsters. It's a good luck charm with a hand with a little red eye in the middle of it that a lot of Jewish people wear. It's just superstition. The little red cords that they wear around their wrist. It's just evil superstition. It's New Age. It's not traditional Jewish ways of doing things. And a lot of it came from Babylon. When they came back from Babylon, they brought a lot of this stuff with them. And we don't wear stuff like that. Doesn't everybody wear fertility symbols and charm bracelets? A lot of these pretty little bracelets and things like that, the little horns that are there and things like that, they're fertility symbols. They're part of the curse, not the blessing. All these figurines and statues that people bring back from overseas, most of them are under a curse. Because they're not there to look pretty, they're there to depict something and to honour a particular deity. But again, don't get too caught up in the whole thing, because people say, I've got this statue and I've got this, that and the other. What it says is don't bow down to it. So don't think that the whole thing's going to curse your whole house. But just understand that it is under a curse. And as long as you don't bow down to it, you're okay. So when you're doing the housework, you have to be upright.
Throw it out. Throw it out. There you go.
A long dustbuster. Painting trees, decorating trees and painting eggs. Isn't that normal?
The Isle of Man.
That only came into the UK in the mid-1800s. Why? Because a German prince came and brought it all with him. It's all Norse god stuff. It's all Teutonic stuff that he brought with him. The worship of trees, the decorating of trees, all of those kind of things. They're under a curse, not a blessing.
Derek Prince has said once he had to throw out some of the little figurines he had taken with him from India.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
That scripture we read last week, Jeff, was not to bring any accursed thing into your house. Otherwise you will become acceptable with it.
Exactly.
Never if you don't know. It's all very
And people say, oh, isn't it talking about people afar off? No. He's saying the people around you will be into all of this stuff. He understood that you're going to go into a place and that stuff will be normal there, and you have to go into it and not compromise your standards.
When I tried to get my mother to believe, I said to the Lord, what is it? He said, she picked up something in India.
Right.
And you know, when I went through the things, there it was. It was a little statue of something to God. And you know, she'd given her body to medical science, and her body was in a place where they take the body for medical science. And right next door to it was a Hindu shop with the exact same thing that she had. It was. It didn't even.
Most of the Hindu gods are actually gods of death and destruction. Again, fertility comes all the way through all the different religious places, all the different cultures. Fertility becomes a big thing all the way through. That's what mistletoe and all these Christmas trees, all this stuff, it's all about fertility gods. Painting eggs, it's a fertility symbol. Ishtar was the fertility goddess. And in different countries it went to, the name changed slightly. In England it became Easter. Easter's just short for Ishtar. Or Eostra.
And my question was to Salazar Virtue from Freedom. I just suddenly thought, what and why is it all about this fertility stuff?
Yeah.
The reproduction, the multiplication. You know, why did that become so important?
Yes.
I think also because they worship through sexual orgies.
Absolutely.
The whole thing goes back to Baal worship.
It goes back to what?
Baal worship.
That's right. The mystery religion that the Vatican inherited. What they did is, whatever country they conquered, they took all of their gods on board and they stuck them all in the same place. So they had all these different things. And when the Babylonian guys, they physically came and gave them all of their symbols and all of their authority and bowed down to them. And this is where most of the regalia that the Catholic Church uses. Dagon the fish god, these big mitre things that they wear. That's a replica of Dagon the fish god. And there's all these different things that they got from that. They took bits and pieces from everywhere and incorporated it into what they do.
But it's interesting because fertility really is about reproduction.
Yeah.
But people want to have fertile partners because they want to reproduce.
Exactly.
So it's kind of in a way when you really think deeply about it. You have to be careful that you don't worship your children.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it was Constantine who actually caused, well, partly with others, but it was him that caused the separation of Jew and non-Jew.
That's right.
I believe
Absolutely he did.
that's where, you know, this whole business that we now live in, where it started.
All came out of the Council of
The Roman
Nicaea.
Emperor.
The Council of Nicaea, all of that was scrapped. Jews were scrapped. They weren't allowed to worship things. They weren't allowed to. They had to burn all their books. They had to do all sorts of things like that. And anything Jewish was taken away and put into this new mystery religion that Rome created, called the Church.
Stop worshipping on Saturday.
The Church didn't happen when Yeshua came. The Church happened when Constantine proclaimed the Church in about 362.
They have such trusting.
Yes.
And they just do communion Sunday, and they have no idea what's going to happen and what has happened.
No. And it just becomes a cultural
And
thing.
so with Joyce, I said to the ministers and the different people, I said, I can't let Joyce come to any of your churches because you'll just make her Christian. And she's not going to understand about the Son. So it's been quite useful.
So, if it's not part of our cultural heritage, am I being narrow-minded? Yes, absolutely.
Because you can afford to.
Yes. They're so open-minded, their brains are falling out. My whole being only focuses on one thing, on Yahweh and being obedient to Him. If that's narrow-minded, let's go with it. Am I a killjoy? Probably. Just like the early Puritans who were so worried that someone, somewhere, might be having fun. Am I condemning relaxation in general, or dancing and movie theatres and drinking in moderation? No. What I'm saying is that we can have far more real fun and real freedom doing things Yahweh's way. Without the need for party pills, bowing down to screen and music idols, and getting blind drunk on a regular basis, and treating sex like an Olympic sport. Our choices is a choice that defies the social norms around us. It goes totally against the expectations of the twisted popular culture that's all around us. That's far more interested in having complete control of my life, my finances, my beliefs, and my family preferences than my well-being. Yes, they want those things, but not for my good, for their good. Well, just keep quiet, just settle down. When something physical or chemical controls me and my family in any way, it becomes a curse. Not a blessing. Because of this kind of pressure to assimilate or to fit in, the Jewish families in Germany and other countries throughout the centuries have often gone in there and tried to become model citizens. Keep quiet and just fit in. Just as they're doing right now in America. They just want to be American. They just want to fit in. They have Hanukkah bushes instead of Christmas trees. And they're just trying to fit in. And what they still haven't learned the lesson of history is it doesn't work. No matter what you try and do, you're still a Jew. They didn't realise that in Germany. They were totally convinced that Germany was so civilised it couldn't happen. All they had to do was fit in and be a model citizen. And so often, the people in the Bless Me clubs in this nation just want to fit in. Just want to be, If we leave the government alone, the government will leave us alone. Depends which government you're talking about. Depends which brown-shirted party you're talking about. Oh, it couldn't happen here. That's why I mentioned the fact that in England, they had black shirts marching through their towns. Just like the Nazi Party in Germany. They assimilated, even though it was merely a virtual reality, they ignored the warning signs and they put up with the persecution just to fit in. In the early days, it was just fine with just, The insinuations that they were inferior, they put up with that. But it was the fact that they became inferior that gave them the excuse to dehumanise them. And once they were dehumanised, you can do anything you like with them. They're just animals. Same thing happened with the African American population in America. Oh, they're just animals. We can do anything we like with them. Buy them, sell them, trade them, whatever. Black people, they're not really civilised. They're just, Once people are dehumanised, they do anything they like with them. They have no value. Why were they treated like that? Because they didn't want to be ostracised for doing things differently. And so many became like everyone else around them. They tolerated and even at times participated in Christmas and Easter. They were eating the same treif or non-kosher foods and drinking the same mind-numbing drinks. Are we in the same position today? Aren't we all faced with all the same dilemmas, physically and spiritually? Should we assimilate to fit in and not rock the boat? Because if we do, by default we'll inherit the curses that go with it. Or do we stay strong and resolute, set apart, and face rejection even from our own family and friends at times? Often some of the greatest persecution we get is from our own family and friends. Why? Because the enemy knows that they'll get to us. Somebody on the street turns around and shouts, as we say, oh, so what? But if our son or our daughter comes in, puts the knife in, it hurts. Receiving criticism, persecution and misunderstanding just because we're not deemed to be loyal to our local humanistic paganized society with all of its traditions. Tradition is one of the hardest things to come against and break. It really is difficult. Particularly the island populations, the South Pacific Islands and things like that. Tradition is rock solid. It's almost impossible to get through that traditional wall.
They confuse culture.
They do.
Culture.
Yeah, they do.
And the culture they face.
Yes.
The religion.
What people don't realise about Jewish people is, I'm Jewish, but I'm not Judaic. I'm not synagogue. I'm not rabbinical. They're two totally separate things, just like they are here. Just because you're a Christian and go to church doesn't make you a New Zealander. In fact, the exact opposite a lot of the time. So you can't marry the two together, and unfortunately, because we've had to survive over the centuries, the two have been pushed together, and it's assumed that if you're one, you must be the other. Of course I'm English. I go to the Anglican church. Well, once a year anyway. Of course I'm Jewish. I go to the synagogue once a year. Yom Kippur. No, it's just religious. They have all these integrated cultural institutions and modified, open-minded, politically correct expectations of us. And those things change. Problem with people that try to assimilate is the things that they assimilate to get more and more liberal. And they're expected to change, to accept those things as well. To stand against these imposed, morally corrupt standards is to be accused of hate speech, bigoted intolerance, judgment, narrow-mindedness and division. I sent John Key a letter when they were talking about scrapping the law of kashrut, the ritual Jewish slaughter of animals, the way it's done. And they wanted to outlaw it. And so I just sent him a letter reminding him of his heritage, his Jewish heritage. And it was a nice letter. I said, if you're going to do these things, you're actually denying your own heritage and everything else. And I got back a reply from his secretary, and on the bottom it got, your communication included hate speech. And I think, what? What hate speech? It's like anything that opposes things is hate speech. And I've heard it more and more lately. When people talk about it in politics, it's like, if you turn around and say, well, same-sex marriage, that's hate speech.
Yeah. They don't understand how they've allowed Muslim people.
Yes. And if you say anything that criticises them, that's hate speech. Yeah.
I've had a lot of people say to me, well, when you're unsaved.
Isn't the bowling ball on?
And I was sort of, and one day the Lord just got me, so I looked at this principle, and I said, if you study these things the way I studied them, you would actually find that possibly
I'm not a mother. But you haven't started them.
That's the whole point.
No.
Yeah. You're the one that's biased. They're the one with the bias.
Yes. But it wasn't that frightening to stand up against him, but until I couldn't.
So on a regular basis we're accused of hate speech, bigoted intolerance, judgment, narrow-mindedness and division. Yahweh says He will set a blessing before us if we obey His mitzvah, His instructions. Or, alternatively, by default, a set of curses will be placed before us. He doesn't turn around and say, well, they've done this, that, and the other, right, I'm going to put some curses. Just automatically, if you do this, the blessings will happen. If you do this, the curses will follow. If we turn away from the way He's instructed us to follow and participate in the practices and worship of other gods that we have not known. For most of us, we have known them. We've all been involved in other institutions and done different things. But we need to turn away from it completely. You can't have a foot in both camps. Because believe me, if you've got a foot in that camp and you get malaria, and you have a foot in that camp, the malaria will still spread. You're not going to have an immune part and a malaria part. It affects the whole body. It's a free will choice. He gives us a free will choice, and that's what makes the difference. People say, what's the difference between what you follow and what they all follow? I say, we have free will. They don't. They demand compliance. They demand obedience. They demand that you follow their leadership. They demand this and demand that. It's control, 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 control. Yahweh, on the other hand, gives us free will. We can either choose Him or reject Him. Because He knows that unless we choose to follow Him, then we cannot have real love. Real love has to be based on choice, not on imposition. Otherwise it's not. Real love is unconditional love, separated from behaviour. We have to decide. We don't just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm not sure if I feel like doing this or feel like doing that. Feelings are not facts. Feelings are just feelings. Does that mean we're not to have feelings? No. The feelings are a part of the whole thing, but they have to be in balance. We can't base our life on feelings. We'll just go around in circles. Why? Because He says He's rejected those who do what in their own opinion seems right in their own eyes. Why? Because they've rebelled, rejected and replaced Him with themselves at the centre of their own little universe as Lord and Master of their own lives. And that's what today's society is all about. It's all about me. It's all about my selfie. It's all about this. It's all about that. Look at the people that people bow down to and worship. They spend their entire time in self-centeredness. Their behaviour, just everything about it, it's all self-centered. What's in it for me? And in vain they try to bless themselves and provide themselves. But then they complain when they inherit the curses attached to those wrong choices. They love the blessings, everybody wants blessings. But unfortunately, when they behave like that, they inherit the curses. And they don't like the curses. They don't like the age, they don't like the weather patterns, they don't like all of the other things that are happening. They only want the blessings.
God says, "I'll allow them to go into His vision." No man can.
Yeah. Yes, face it, if everyone follows the same road rules, we'll be blessed and much safer. But if we don't, we'll be cursed with chaos, death and destruction as a direct consequence of our disobedience. If we follow the road rules, we're relatively safe. Apart from that, the reason road rage happens now is because the person in the car are at the centre of their own little universe, and you mustn't do anything that affects that or impinges on it. And the bigger their little universe, the more they think they can do whatever they like. You didn't realise, did you? But when you buy a BMW, you get an automatic dispensation to go 40 kilometres faster. So are Yahweh's principles still relevant today? Look around you. Examine the evidence. See how fast society has disintegrated and gone downhill when they're ignored. It's clear. Do we get the leaders we deserve? Isn't that a horrifying question? They say we get the leaders we deserve, in which case we're in big trouble. As I look around the world today, I'm appalled at the total lack of moral and spiritual leadership on offer. Not just in politics, but in every other area of society. Why? Because they're not following His principles. And if they do that, they'll inherit the curses and not the blessing. And if the people follow them and elect them, they will inherit those curses. Because they're following the direction that they take them in. How do they achieve their power and influence? By saying what people want to hear. I've always said when I was involved with the church, I could walk into any church in the country and be in the top part of their leadership within 12 months. How can I say that? Because I know what to say, I know what to do, and how it works. And if you do the right thing and say the right thing, the progression will be rapid. Doesn't mean you're a good person, doesn't mean you're following things God's way, it just means you're fitting in and complying with the rules and regulations around you and saying what they want to hear. And I see it all the time.
But if you tell them what you should have said about the garden, it's very much.
Yes. So they achieve their power and influence by saying what people want to hear, and then they deceive them with illusions, all produced by smoke and mirrors. They're not real. They are whitewashed tombs, lovely and clean on the outside, but full of rotting decay on the inside. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. They are the blind leading the blind. What happens when the blind lead the blind? They all go over the cliff. White stick's great till you come to the edge of a cliff and then there's nothing to figure out where you are. And a lot of people have come to the edge of the cliff and they're all just following each other over like lemmings. Because it's the right thing to do. It's culture. It's fitting in. But we follow a different leader, a different kind of leader. One who says what he means and means what he says. And says that he'll lead us into all truth. Is that worth any rejection and criticism and persecution we face? Yes. Because let's face it, Yeshua told us to expect it just as he did. How many sermons do you hear on being persecuted and reviled? And yet Yeshua told us that that's what we're to expect. If we keep getting pats on the back from everybody, we're doing something wrong. Does it mean we antagonise people and try and be like that? No. But it just means we're going to be misunderstood, we're going to be rejected, we're not going to fit in.
No.
Not even with our own families. A lot of the time. That's why we need to pray that they get redeemed. And start to understand where we're really at. It's like my daughter. When you change religion, I didn't change religion, I just went deeper into the truth. Anyway, I hate religion with a passion. Religion is hard and harsh and no mercy. And they think they know everything. So yeah, let's face it. Yeshua told us to expect it just as he did. Why? Because the principalities and powers are the same today as they were. They haven't changed. They haven't become modernised. They may have changed some of their techniques, but they're still the same. Just like he's still the same. It's still the same battle, but just done in different ways. They haven't changed their agenda in any way, shape or form. Only puppets change those whose strings they pull. So the puppets change, the strings change, but it's the same system. They have absolutely no power or influence over our lives unless we give it to them. And people say, because we beware of demons, we've got to beware of this, that and the other and everything else, defend. No. They have no power or influence unless we give it to them. And why would we give it to them when we serve the Creator of the universe, the King of Kings, who promises us that those that are for us are far greater than those who are against us? Why? Because it's 2/3, 1/3. We're talking about principalities and powers. We've got 2/3, they got 1/3. The fact that 1/3 is on the planet we live in is what causes the problems. But it's when he turns around and says, we're surrounded by the enemy. And Yahweh says, hang on a minute, I'll open his eyes. And the enemy that's surrounding us are surrounded by a far greater army from heaven. And sometimes we have to ask him and say, look, I know the enemy's surrounding me, but please show me your guys that are surrounding them. Greater is he that's for us than those that are against us. No weapon formed against us will prosper unless we let it. He gives us his blessing when we're faithful and obedient to him. And his kingdom. So klala or bracha, curses or blessings. Mount Gerizim or Mount Ebal. And the difference between the two is, if you physically go there today, is the one that the blessings were proclaimed from is lush and productive right the way to the top. There's greenery everywhere. The other one, I think it was Ebal was the other one, the curses. Ebal is barren, rocky, stony, and nothing grows. Isn't that interesting? So physically, you can see the difference between the two. One's barren, one's not. One's blessed, one isn't.
One's life, one's death.
Yeah. Obedience or disobedience. Talmud, we cannot just try and sit on the fence. As I've said before, the fence is about 10 yards into hell. It's a special place that people go to that think they're safe. It's like the frog in the boiling pot. You put it in the cold water and you gradually heat up the pot and it boils to death because it happens gradually. The people sit on the fence gradually just rot away into hell. We have to choose one or the other, blessings or curses. And that choice is entirely ours to make, as are the consequences. So Shalom Bracha Aleph, blessed one, Shalom.